Hi guys, this is Lashette from Scarlet Moon Creations and I am back. This is my March reading wrap up where I talk about the last of the books I read in the month of March and give you some reading stats. Feels like it's been a while. I must say that the weather is getting warmer, so let's start with those warm weather disclaimers. I live in a busy street and the window is right over there, so there might be some ambient noises, though I hope not. I hope it's early enough. But you might hear just low grade traffic, if nothing else. So be aware. I'll edit out as much random noises as I can, but it is what it is. So let's start with some stats. And like I mentioned in I think my previous video, since that was like the end of February, beginning of March, the stats are coming from Storygraph now, and yeah, so they're not as detailed maybe as they used to be, but that's okay. Because I'm using the free option, that's why. Alright, so for March, I read a total of 6 books, which is not bad. It's just 3 of those books I've already talked about were manga and comic books, and I have a ton of library books out that I really do want to read, but yeah. Altogether, that was 768 pages read and 14.22 hours listened. There's this mood thing, and for the majority of my books, adventurous was the biggest mood, followed by mysterious, which I get, and lighthearted, which I also get. Those are the 3 biggest moods. The pace, about 60%, it was a medium pace for 3 of those books. Wow, were all of my books less than 300 pages? Yes, except for the audiobook. Okay, everything was fiction. We had romance, like I said, manga and fantasy. To break that down even more, I had like an action spy thriller, a horror, 2 fantasy, though one is a fantasy romance, and 1 straight contemporary romance. And lastly, a superhero fantasy comic. 3 were by Black authors with Black main characters. I read 1 physically, 1, 2, 3, 4 ebooks and 1 audiobook. Last but not least, my ratings. I had 2 5-star reads. Like, even when preparing for this, I was double checking my ratings and I was like, should I remove those 5 stars? But I still feel really strongly about them. So maybe just barely 5 stars, but still 5 stars. 1 4-star read, 2 3.5-star reads, and 1 2.5-star read. So I've had 2 5 stars, but also the lowest rated book of the year so far. Not bad, in my opinion. Alright, so let's get into these last 3 books that I've read, okay? The next book that I finished was one I've been wanting to get to. I think I've heard about it this year, early this year, from Elise's, who was telling me about this small town Black romance series where it's kind of witchy. There's a little bit of a magical herbalism element in there, and it's a small town romance series, trilogy by Tasha L. Harrison. I read book 1, A Taste of Her Own Medicine. I had been dying for some romance and tired of putting it off, and maybe I'll do a discussion video about my issues with reading in the last year or so. I read this digitally via the Libby app. So I read the ebook and I enjoyed it. I gave it 3.5 stars. I am thinking about pushing it to 4. But anyway, this book, we're following a woman who is recently divorced. She had, uh, kids from her marriage thing. She was basically a homemaker, and you know what? What's that song by Mary J. Blige? Is that I'm not gonna cry? Is that the name of the song? But it's from the Waiting to Exhale soundtrack, so it's about the woman who she put her kind of life on hold for her husband. She worked as his secretary every given day of the week. Let me not just say the whole song lyrics. That's kind of a similar situation we have here in the book. Our main character, she raised her kids, she took care of their home, and she worked at her husband's job for free. Now that they're getting a divorce, she's stopped working at his job. Now she's trying to figure out what to do with her life. The difference, obviously, from Waiting to Exhale here is the fact that her mother is a known herbalist. I don't want to say witch because it's not the same thing. She is of Gullah heritage. I'm not 100% sure exactly how to pronounce that, but these are people from an island off I believe it's the coast of Virginia. They were slaves who were freed very relatively early in American history, and they kept a lot of their West African beliefs and roots and practices, a lot of which is dealing with roots and plants and herbs in what I guess anthropologists and modern people would see as a pagan or witchy or apothecary type of way. So her mom is known for this, and she has kind of passed on to her daughters this knowledge and practice. But we're following the eldest daughter. I was confused for a while. Thought she was the middle child for the longest time. She kind of does this gardening and skincare type of thing, and if you follow me, I do the same. I have no, as far as I'm aware, Gullah connections, so I'm winging it. But that's what Scarlet Moon Creation is. Me working with roots and resins and herbs and flowers and all of that stuff, and make wellness things for self-care, internally and externally, and for ritual stuff. But anyway, so I was loving this. This woman is trying to figure out what to do with her life now and deal with her now ex-husband and their growing children. And one of her friends convinces her, you should start a business. And the thing is, to do that, she wants to take this, startup business course. And the guy who is running it is our love interest. He is from the town. He moved away when he was younger because he had some opportunities, and he has come back to start a business with his best friend growing up there, and it's very interesting. This wasn't enough for me. This was too short. I wanted more of them getting together, more moments of them, figuring each other out and things like that. I did like the whole startup thing, and I gotta say, I don't really understand the issues that it seemed like a lot of people had with him having left and then come back. Maybe that could have been fleshed out a little bit more. I do get, we had a full conversation with the best friend and what she was talking about, so that made sense. But I didn't really feel the whole player persona or reputation that this guy had. I was, where does that come from? We never kind of went anywhere with that. Is it because of the situation with the best friend and how he left with another woman? And that's why the whole town thinks he's a player? I don't, like, there was a mention about him coming back and dating, I think, a bartender, but that was it. That was the one, again, from what this story gave me, this man has now had 3 relationships. So why is he a player? His family, or his mom, is very cute with the gardener guy. That was really cute. I did like the chemistry between them. I wish we got to see more moments with him and her kids. The blow up with her ex-husband, while I was expecting it, still kind of felt like it came out of nowhere. There's like a connection between the ex and the current guy that was mentioned briefly during that whole charge moment and kind of never went anywhere. So you see what I'm saying? Like, certain things I feel like should have been fleshed out, and now I'm talking about it more. I'm like, I'm not gonna bump this up to a full 4 stars, but I thoroughly enjoyed all of the elements that were there. Like I said, the whole thing with their practices and all of that was just beautiful. The relationship between the 3 sisters, I've thoroughly enjoyed. The mom and the dad and all of that stuff. The whole startup thing was kind of glossed over to an extent. We could have gotten a little bit more, but I feel like we got enough for this book. I just as someone who's gone through these things, I was like, really? We're not going to talk about the other lessons? Because the other women in the class being weird was entertaining, to be perfectly honest. I enjoyed it. I just wish like those certain things were fleshed out a little bit more. The next book I finished was, I guess, another Black romance. The Cry of Metal and Bone is book 3 in the Earthsinger Chronicles by L. Penelope, and I listened to this audiobook via the Libby app. The first half I was kind of about. The second half came in and like made me feel better. This is a fantasy romance series where in the first book we have 2 countries, and I'm remembering their names now. We have Lagrimar and Elsira, and these 2 countries have been at odds in some way, shape, or form for a long time. And the premise in the beginning is that because the Elsirians do not have magic and the Lagrimari do. And then I'm still a little confused, and I might need to reread the first book about the race of the peoples, because in my head, the Elsirians, I believe it was described, they have a lighter skin tone and are red-haired, and the Lagrimari are darker skinned and have thick, dark hair. I was assuming Elsirians are white, but they might not necessarily be so pigeonholed. These might all just be Black people of varying skin tones, which is realistic. The red hair is what threw me, to be perfectly honest. And again, that's like my ignorance, I feel, but maybe because I think someone else mentioned this, there might be some clarification needed on the author's part in the writing process. But otherwise, I feel like this is good writing. Not, oh my god, but pretty damn good. Anyway, in book 1, we're following Jasminda, who mother had passed away many years ago, and her father and brothers also died recently, leaving her in the world by herself. Her father was Lagrimarian and her mother Elsirian, but all living in Elsira. And the Elsirians are very prejudiced against the Lagrimari, who are very obviously different from them. Jasminda lives kind of on the edge of the country, on the outside of town, because the people don't really accept her and her family is gone. one day she has to go into town, and on the way back she comes across this guy, Jack, who is like, I need your help. She doesn't want to have anything to do with him, so she walks off and leaves him alone. Come to find out, Jack is actually a spy from the Elsyrian government who had escaped capture in Lagrimar. And the thing is, these two countries are neighbors, but they have this kind of magical border between them that is supposed to keep people separate. No one is able to cross. Somehow, Jack and his pursuers have crossed. The pursuers not realizing that they have, but Jack does. Anyway, he asks Jasmine for help, but she dismisses him, and he winds up getting caught by the Lagrimarian soldiers. They proceed to take him back, and a storm comes, so they can't make it through the mountains. And lo and behold, whose house do they find? But Jasmine does. And so she winds up taking them in because they can't go anywhere. And she finds out more about Jack's situation, that he's a spy, and so she winds up helping him. So the story continues from there, and things get big. There is this goddess figure who is kind of orchestrating a lot of things. The evil ruler of the Lagrimari people also tried to do similarly. The war is because he wants to take over Elsyria. That was the first book in the series. We've come a long way. This series is, I believe, 4 novels and 3 novellas. And I'm enjoying it. Book 1 was kind of middle of the road, but the novellas and the book 2 and now book 3, which I just finished, are much better. I gave Cry of Metal and Bone 3.5 stars because the first half bothered me. And this is a me thing that I've realized, and I've said this in previous videos for other books. I like a large cast of characters, but when we're changing perspectives between too many people, points of view, voices, too often, it gets irritating. It takes me out of my enjoyment of the story. And that's what was happening through the first half of Cry of Metal and Bone. A lot of people have kind of come together where in the first 2 novels and the first 2 novellas, everyone was kind of separate. Now, they're all in the same story. And so, at minimum, we have 8 points of view now. And we're switching every time. Like, I'm into the story, but we're on one person's point of view, and I'm like, okay, well, what happens next? But then the next chapter, we switch to someone else. So everything's taking place simultaneously, and I understand why it's written like that, but it was irritating. So I would put the book down and just be like, and I, realized it after a while. But in the first couple of chapters, there weren't that many perspectives with changing. So I was okay. Then, there were several chapters because people are now traveling. People who were all in the same area are now traveling to other countries and splitting up. So it was frustrating as hell. Like, I enjoyed all of the activities they were doing, the conversations they were having, and then seeing certain events from multiple perspectives was interesting. And then, people starting to realize that they are connected tighter than they were. Like, the story that we've been following from the beginning has become more complex, and characters are starting to realize things, and I love that, right? But on the other hand, it's just like, can y'all stay in one place, please? In the second half, no, and a quarter of the way into the book, like I said, a bunch of people travel all together, but they have three different motives. And they go to another country, and then they leave that, and then some of them leave that country and then go to a third country. And so we're introduced to new things a lot. And there's some characters we haven't seen, I think. No, that's not true. There are some characters that I didn't think would come back again. I didn't think they were that important for the future of the overarching series, but I was wrong, and that was a surprise. So I wasn't sure exactly what was going on, and with those two. But anyway, the second half of the book, we get some action happening, and some people putting their foot down, and then people coming back together to be all in one place. There's, like I said, some revelations and some reunions, and I loved it. I was just like, yes, okay, now I can focus, and I just like sped through that part. And this is while listening to the audiobook, by the way. I don't commute, so listening to an audiobook is difficult. I don't have like large stretches of time where I could just listen to an audiobook where I can focus on it and take in what's happening. So that's why the couple on the cover is not Black romance. Like, the woman is not Black, but the man is, and that made me realize that the couple from the previous novella was a Black romance. I gotta say, I guess they are the main couple in this. This is the new romance, whereas the other couples are all from the previous books. So we're kind of catching up with them. We're seeing romance between them in some way, shape, or form. Like, one dude is trying to save the woman from book 2 that he's in love with, and he's like dead set on it. F the whole world, literally. Then the couple from book 1 are still trying to find their feet in their new situation in life, and struggling with their relationship and their love for one another versus the reality of their situation. And those were all given equal time. There's 2 people who were mentioned quite often, a couple. They're not currently together in this book, but they will be, hopefully, eventually, now that dude has been saved. But anyway, so I guess the main couple, I feel like the 3 couples I talked about just now were given kind of equal time in this book. So I don't know if 2 of them are Black romance. They're Black couples. It's just the one that's on the cover are 2 who haven't been on previous covers, and their relationship is brand new. Their chemistry, their meeting even, is brand spanking new. So I think that's why they were given a priority. But we don't know. Like, we get to the end of the book where they're like really together, but it's just the beginning of their relationship. So we'll have to see how it goes forward, which I am definitely looking forward to, because Homegirl is going to be in a completely different culture and situation that she's used to, and they're going to have to figure it out, and I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, 3.5 stars. The last book I want to mention, I have a copy of here because I requested it from the library, but this is Static Season 1. Hadita Ayala, Illustrated by Clary Randolph, Nicholas Draper Ivy, Reginald Hudlin, Chris Cross, Dennis Cohen. This is the March book for the Realm of Comics book club. This is a collection of issues 1 through 6 of Static Season 1. This is a reboot as Milestone has come back, as Milestone returns. That is the publisher. And this is under DC Comics. And I read this via Hoopla, so I read the ebook version, but like I said, I requested this from the library, and then my request got canceled. And so I read the Hoopla version, and while requesting this, because y'all know how I am, I'd like the less editing of books into the video I have to do, the happier I am. So this is a reboot of Static, the original comic, which was then made into a cartoon, Static Shock. This is a reboot because it's not following the same exact story. We are still following Virgil, who becomes one of the Bang Babies, but it's a modern version. How they become Bang Babies is completely different. His parents are alive. He has a close relationship with them, and with his sister is loving and supportive. I think that is the biggest difference here. That, and then everyone knows, for the most part, that he's a Bang Baby very early on, if not immediately. The same for a lot of the other Bang Babies. So I did not read the original series. I didn't know that it was a comic book series at first, but I did watch Static Shock. Didn't watch every single episode, so I didn't remember everything. My dad, I gave this to him, and he was like, oh, and he read it, and we talked about it, and he was like, yeah, so this was this, and that was that. I was like, okay, cool. What happens is, right, that we're in, modern times, modern Dakota. People are protesting against police brutality and for Black Lives Matter, that kind of thing. And Virgil is there with some of his school friends. He winds up getting into a fight with one of his bullies, which starts, the police, who are at this peaceful protest, throwing tear gas and attacking mostly teenagers. This tear gas happens to be experimental, and while a lot of these kids wind up in jail, many of them wind up dying from the tear gas or turning into Bang Babies. Virgil gets his kind of static electromagnetic powers and abilities from there, and he's trying to figure out how to deal with that, and hot streak, and the government trying to round up Bang Babies and all of that stuff. And I enjoyed it just as much as I enjoyed the original. I have to say, I really, really love the artwork in this. First of all, Virgil is cute. He is cute. And I like scenes like this here, where we get like the foreground being in focus and the background not. That it gives like that camera quality. There were some confusing things because there's one character in here who keeps changing. Like, literally the way she looks is different through very different issues. And I'm like, is that the friend? Because she was a redheaded white girl. And now when we're painting the house, this is a black girl with what looks to be a weave and dark hair. And then later on, she seems like a white girl with blonde pigtails. I don't know. I was just like, what is happening here? The sister is a little confusing because her hairstyle keeps changing, which is not bad, right? This is a person. We change our hair. You style your hair differently every day. But I think the artwork on her face she looked older in some scenes than others, and that was really weird. With the hairstyle changes, it made it seem like she was a different person, but at least her race didn't change. There's that. I guess because there might have been different artists for each issue, Virgil looks slightly different, and I think like that is the biggest drawback from this series. Why I didn't get 5 stars? Because there's a whole character who looks like a completely different person for no reason. Feels like there was some timing issues that could have been clarified. I feel like this is really short. I mean, it's 6 volumes of a comic book, but it feels like everything takes place back to back. But then if you think about it, there had to be some time in between, like when they have the protest to when he finds out that he has these abilities, because he was in the hospital. Several people were in the hospital for several days at least, and then they talk about like someone rounding up the Bang Babies. Obviously they wouldn't have found them all, or so many of them, so quickly. So it was like there was some help from Hot Streak, but still, I think the science was very well done, but could use some clarification on some things that I like am not 100% sure on. So those were like little nitpicky things, but I love this art style 100%. I was very confused about the whole thing with Rocket and Icon, I think. Yeah, so there's some confusion there, but I don't know who they are, and yeah. Virgil's outfit changes quite a bit in this. I think maybe, hopefully, we'll get more details on that later. But yeah, like I said, 4 out of 5 stars. I'm a superhero comic, and I'm happy to see it back. I do want to check out some of the others, and there's like a compendium volume coming out from the original Milestone. Or it's out already, the original 1990s material that launched the Milestone universe. There are other characters, clearly, so I'm interested in checking out more. So that was the last book I read in the month of March. What did you read? Have you read any of these books? What did you think of them? How was your reading month? If you haven't read any of these, what was your favorite book of the month? And guys, if you made it this far, leave me a little lightning bolt in the comments down below if you want to support and you don't know what to write. Like my video if you liked it. Subscribe if you are new. Hit the notification bell so you know when the next video is coming out. I have a reading tag to do for spring, so that'll be coming as far as bookish content goes. And guys, links in the description to everything I mentioned here, including links to my other social media, Instagram and Twitter, as well as Goodreads and Storygraph if you would like to follow me on any of those. There's also a 10% off discount code to my Etsy shop where I make all natural bath and body products, a la A Taste of Her Own Medicine, and for magical and mundane purposes. And I offer tarot and oracle card readings if you would like one. So guys, thank you as always so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.